Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Stearns with Haley Marketing, and today's Lunch with Haley webinar is going to get kicked off in just about 2 more minutes. All right, guys, now with our new format, we get to all be live for the 2 minutes beforehand. So exciting. So is everybody ready to talk about how to get more response from a website? But don't give away any tips yet.
Sure. I'm always ready to talk about that.
For sure. For those people that are here early, though, I do have a question. If you could type into chat, I'm curious to see if people are seeing orders start to decline, if they're pretty steady over the last few weeks, or if they're getting more orders now that we're back into the new year.
More. All right.
I love it, Lauren.
So Brad, while we're getting people to tell us how job orders are going, you need to tell the audience what you told us right before we went on about how you were doing some prep work and turned that into some quick blog posts.
Yeah, for sure. So while we were preparing for this, I was just jotting down some notes or some bullet points of things that I wanted to cover. There's so much to cover for this topic. I didn't want to leave anything off. So what I did is I just took my bullet points and used some technology and AI to turn that into content that we could share. Now it spits back some content that needs some editing and needs some tweaking. And the real thought was behind the topics that I entered into this, but thought it was a great way to just repurpose the work that you're already putting into something and create an output that you could use in other places that we could use to hopefully drive more leads for our own business.
All right, very cool. All right, well, it is just 2 o'clock, so I'm going to move on, and it is time to get today's Lunch with Haley kicked off. So welcome everybody to Lunch with Haley with our team from Haley Marketing. We're here today to talk to you about your website and how to turn your website into more of a sales engine. Now, we asked just before we went live about how people are seeing more or fewer orders, and haven't had a ton of feedback yet, but so far it's mostly been more. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Put it into the chat if you're seeing more or less orders. But today we're going to talk to you about how to get more response, more orders, more people applying out of your website. So we've got a big team. These are our in-house specialists in this topic called conversion rate optimization. So myself and my co-CEO, Vicky, our Chief Marketing Officer, Jeff, Chief Strategy Officer, Brad, and our Director of Creative Services, Becca, will be helping to guide today's discussion. Now, before we get into the Q&A part, just to kick off, I'm actually going to do a very quick recap of a webinar we did last August. So if you saw the August webinar, this will be just a refresher. If you didn't see it, we're going to do very quickly where there's a full hour on this thing called CRO, or conversion rate optimization. So CRO is part art, part science, part do a lot of testing and be creative. And what you're trying to think about is, how do I get more of the people who visit my website to take an action? You spend a lot of money on marketing, on recruiting, on job advertising. You spend a lot of your team's time on social media, and you're trying to drive people to your website. But you really need to think about, how do we get more of those people to take an action? So in general, across staffing websites, there's about a 60% bounce rate, which means people who hit your site and then leave, go somewhere else without doing anything. Now, you're never going to get that anywhere near zero, but you want to work on ways to drive down that bounce rate by getting people deeper into your site, more importantly, getting them to contact you in some way. So there are 3 things that go into CRO: drivers, hooks, and barriers. Now, let me explain all those a little bit more. So drivers, it's really understanding who's coming to your site. So, you've got job seekers, employers, current associates, current clients. You've got partners, vendors. You might have people looking for internal jobs. There are a lot of different audiences who are coming to your website, and they have different goals in mind. And the first part about the drivers is really understanding, why are these people coming? What is it that hooks them in, that makes them want to talk to your website, visit your website? What do they want to know from you? Why are they going to your website instead of just picking up the phone? So in marketing speak, Jeff and I will talk about personas because we're the two marketing geeks here, and really defining who these audiences are. Vicki had me watch a presentation recently from a guy named Alan Miltz, who actually is a financial consultant. But at the beginning of his talk, he talks about personas, and he said, when someone says, who is your ideal customer? You don't say, well, it's an HR manager of a manufacturing company. You say it's Jane Doe. And here's the description of Jane. And your ideal customer, the people coming to your website, you should know them by name and have a picture in your mind. And most importantly, understand their business challenges, their needs, their wants, their desires. Because when it comes to your website converting, what's driving people to your website is what they want. So, they need help solving problems with staffing challenges, finding a job. They may have a question for you. We assume people know how staffing works, but a lot of people who use staffing services don't. They don't know how direct hire works. They don't know what temp to hire is all about. They don't know what an on-site program is. They don't know how to get hired through a staffing agency. Maybe people were referred to you and I'm supposed to talk to Jim at ABC Staffing, but I really don't know what Jim does or why Jim can help me. Someone just told me I should talk to Jim. So a lot of people, particularly candidates, are referred to you and they don't understand the role you play in helping them find a job. Basically, people are coming to you because they want answers. The question you have to ask is, do our people know the questions? And do the people putting together our website, have they made sure we're answering the questions with the content on our site? So those are your drivers. Then we've got the hooks. Hooks are the things we do to get someone to take an action. So we can solve a problem. We can provide an answer to a question. We can give them something of value. We can have an offer, a CTA, a call to action. So the idea with hooks is I'm thinking about all of those people and all of the things they might do on our website. Now, obviously, we want candidates to apply to jobs. We love employers to contact us because they want to place a job order. But that's not all the reasons somebody might take an action. Maybe they want a salary guide. Maybe they want to talk to a recruiter. Maybe they want their resume reviewed. So you want to just brainstorm ideas. And here's a few things to get you started. So the ability to search jobs, that's a hook. The ability to skip the search and apply now, that's a different kind of hook. The ability to sign up for a job agent or request an employee, or the ability to read about a topic because there's something in your blog that's of interest. Download a, fill in the blank, an ebook, a white paper. Get a free, maybe it's content, maybe it's service, maybe it's something you're offering. I know a few people probably on today's webinar just got an email from us offering a free CRO website review. If you didn't get the email, don't worry, we've got the same offer to get a free website review coming up at the end of this presentation. Sign up for, not a newsletter. Every staffing company should have some sort of regular ongoing communication that helps you nurture relationships with clients, with prospects, with candidates. But we said not a newsletter because no one wants a newsletter. They want something that has information, something that's interesting. So when I go to get a magazine, I'm buying a magazine because of the topic it's about, the title. I'm not going to the store saying, I just want a magazine. And that's the problem with a lot of newsletters. Companies will say, sign up for our newsletter. But a newsletter in and of itself has no value. It's having a branded publication you share. And creating incentives to act now. It could be a special offer on your services, but creating that fear of missing out, the FOMO. So if somebody doesn't act now, this offer is going away. Those are some of the hooks. And there's one more. People might actually want to talk to you. And so if I've got a question about a job, question about hiring, I might want to talk to somebody in a safe environment. Maybe it's through physically getting on the phone. Maybe it's through a chatbot. All right, and then lastly, we got to worry about the barriers. What's causing those people to bounce? What's causing people to leave before they fill out some form on your website or get your phone number and call you? So a lot of websites, there's simply nothing offered. There are offers that require emotional commitment. If you're asking me to apply to a job, that can be scary, especially if I'm already employed, especially in this market. So that emotionally is tough. I may want to do something that's less emotional before I apply to a job. like downloading a piece of content or getting an answer to a question. If you're asking to talk to a salesperson or a recruiter, believe it or not, that has emotional commitment because somebody's going to be worried about, oh no, I'm going to have to deal with some pushy salesperson. Not that any of you would ever be pushy, but that's how people feel when there's an opportunity to talk to a salesperson. So we have to deal with that so they feel very positive, engaged, and excited about talking to you. A lot of websites have a lack of clarity. The copy's too long. I can't skim it. I'm not familiar with the navigation. The calls to action just are not clear. There's bad copy. It's too long, too salesy, too much hype. It's really not educating me. It's not adding value. It's not talking to me as the visitor to your website. It's only talking about you and what you do as a staffing company. I may leave because I'm not sure what you do, or if you do it for people like me. I don't trust you, and your website has to build a lot of trust. There have to be great trust signals in there, reviews, testimonials, awards that you've won. I need proof. Whatever you're going to try to sell to me, prove to me that it works. Are there case studies? Are there video testimonials from clients talking about how you changed their business and solved their business problems? People don't have much of an attention span these days. They lack patience. So if it takes me too long to find what I want, I'm out of there. And sometimes they're just crappy design that your website look doesn't match the quality of your staffing services, quality of the recruiting you do. It doesn't match your brand. And I've seen this happen all too often. There's an inability to respond, particularly on mobile and particularly with job applications where there's way too many questions. And then the site itself, if it's just slow or it's frustrating to work with, it has a bad user experience. That's Becca's areas of expertise is UI, UX. If it's a bad experience, nobody's going to stick around. And then I think last, maybe there's one more in here, but navigation. If there's a bad navigation that doesn't direct people to the call to action, they get lost, they get distracted, you won't get response. And last one, again, forms too long. I mentioned earlier, but particularly applications, but any contact form, whenever there's more than 3 fields, we start to lose people. And that's because, my favorite picture here, us humans have less of an attention span than a goldfish. A goldfish can master 8 seconds of attention. On a website, most people are at 3 to 5. So we have to do all this stuff to hook them in 3 to 5 seconds. Okay, so that's the overview of CRO. Think about the drivers, who's coming. Think about the hooks, what they want. Think about the barriers, what gets in the way. And now I'm going to actually jump out of PowerPoint so you can just see all of us. And we're going to talk about what people want. And the first question, guys, to talk about is what gets employers to a staffing website? So Brad, you want to lead us off here?
Yeah, sure. David, I think it really gets back to those questions that you posed at the beginning here. It starts by understanding your target audience. What's keeping them up at night? What are their biggest barriers to success? What problems are getting in their way? What are they passionate about? And I think we all need to take the time to ask our current clients these questions. Get your sales team to ask them these questions. Gather that insight. Because if we want to get people to our website and we want to get them to take action, we need to know answers to these questions. From there, I like to use the website as really a hub of information. So looking at building out pieces of content, looking at building out education that provide value. So blogs, articles, white papers, podcasts, video, look at all the different available mediums to get that content and that message in front of people so that they can consume it how they like. We need to answer those issues that are keeping your clients up at night. So showcase how you solved the same problem they have for other companies in your market or your industry. There's a great book called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. He really goes into this strategy, but it's really thinking through what problems people are facing and then providing solutions to that. And then once you kind of build those solutions, you build out that content hub, then I think you can turn to other marketing vehicles to get that information to people, to spread the word, to share that content, and hopefully drive traffic back to your website. So I like to build out that hub, use social media as one of those spokes on that wheel to get that content in front of more people. Get your sales reps and your sales team to share that content. We built out a tool called NetSocial that helps you amplify that content and get salespeople to be involved in sharing that, because there's a lot of research that says that individual salespeople sharing that content is way more impactful than a company or a brand sharing it. In fact, I believe the number is 76% of people trust content from individuals more than they do a brand or company page. So it's vitally important to create that content for your company, but then get individuals to share it. I love sharing that in groups on social networks. You mentioned an email newsletter or email marketing. While nobody wants a newsletter, they do want the value and the content and the advice and the education that's offered in that. So use email as a way to get that in front of more people. I love using pay-per-click ads to get your name, your value, your content in front of new prospects. And then once you do, and you get prospects to engage, using remarketing ads or campaigns to drive those people back to your website at a future date. I love the concept of getting salespeople to use that content. So again, posting on social media, sharing one-to-one, connecting with people on LinkedIn, and not saying, hey, do you have a staffing sales order? But instead say something to the effect of, hey, I know a lot of people are facing issues with disengagement of their workforce. Here's a great article on our website that walks through 3 things you can do to engage your staff. So provide value, don't have a direct sales pitch. I also like taking that content that's on your hub digitally and turning that into hard copies. So look at creating printable pieces, or turn that content into an integrated direct mail campaign that you can use to surround your audience and give your salespeople some process. And then you're creating all this content, make sure it's search engine optimized. SEO is really about a process. So we're constantly adding new content, fresh content. We're constantly answering new questions or new issues that our audience is facing. We'll even go so far as, when we're doing ongoing SEO for one of our clients, to audit competitors. So take a look at other staffing companies in your market or your industry, see how they're getting traffic to their website. Then we reverse engineer that content, create better, deeper, richer content, and earn that traffic away from them. If we do head into a recession, it's going to be very important that you get a bigger piece of that pie. And I think that's a great strategy to do it. Let me think, what else? I love local targeting for PPC ads. So if you're a local staffing agency, I think you should be running local Google Map ads. So when somebody is looking for a staffing agency, a recruiting partner, an employment agency in your market, run those ads. They're a great tool for you, especially if you have amazing and a high volume of online reviews. You can get that out in front of people and really differentiate your staffing firm. And then to kind of put it all together, as long as you're creating this content, we're big proponents of using marketing automation to get this in front of more people, to make sure that you're doing the right activities at the right intervals with the right frequency. That's probably a good transition point. Jeff, you're our in-house marketing automation expert. You want to kind of build on that a little bit?
You were doing so well. I was just going to let you take care of it. You can take it all, man. No, but I think everything that Brad said is fantastic. I mean, that's what I'm seeing when we're working with our clients on, creating that content that is going to make it, really introduce, but then bring them back. I think, if you're talking about marketing automation, using HubSpot, using ActiveCampaign, using Bullhorn Automation Sense, I think that there's a real opportunity. I've seen 3 ways or 3 areas that, staffing firms are doing a really great job of driving people back using automation. And mostly because you have to be taught to sell again. I think that's the biggest thing is there's this, now we have to sell, now we have to reintroduce to clients, to prospects, to inactive clients. And I think that, when you don't have the people, or you need to expand the footprint, automation is a huge game changer in terms of being able to expand that reach. And so the 3 areas that I see that are working really well for staffing firms, and we do it, almost every day with ours, is number 1 is driving them back to the website through a welcome series. So a lot of times sales is, finding a list of people, whether it's a Chamber of Commerce, or maybe it's a Zoom info list or something like that, and using the website as part of the introduction in the welcome series, talking about a pain point, talking about a problem, but then bringing them back to the site as the answer. Brad, you mentioned all those different things as the hub, and bringing them back, whether it's to a page, to a blog post, to an article, and just kind of reiterating the points in your email or in that welcome series to drive them back to the site. So I think that's a great use of automation and bringing that site into the plan. The other one is really that outreach side, and sales is making calls. They are, maybe there is a LinkedIn ad that they are responding to. What happens afterwards? So being able to have an automation campaign that kicks in when somebody downloads something, on a site or on LinkedIn or something like that, and then being able to bring them back, and give them, just keep telling that story in the automation and helping salespeople, even if they are making a call and they want to get to a meeting, and hey, I want to meet with you at some point. I've got some great things. You can have an automation kick off and then be able to drive them back to that website and again, reintroduce. And then the third way that I'm seeing it is in the close side of things. If you have some testimonials, case studies, that is a great way from a sales perspective to be able to drive them back to basically say, this is how we've helped others like you, take a look here. And again, you're using it as a way to close the deal. And you put it as part of automation, whether you have, maybe it's been a while since you've talked to them, an inactive client, or maybe it's a part of the close, you can bring them back to that site and use that hub as just proof that you're doing well. So I think those are ways that we're seeing, and we're working with clients on the sales automation side. So Vicki, I'm going to throw it to you. You probably have much better things.
I don't know. I think both of you have covered most everything I would have covered in driving people to the website. I think just getting back a little bit more to the basics of really understanding who your audience is, really knowing what motivates them and what their problems are. And I think David mentioned personas, but targeting different types of buyers. You've got people coming to your site, you got different people coming. There's CEOs, there's HR managers, department heads, there's job seekers. You might have your current clients, you might have current employees. What are they coming to your site for? What problems are they having? What questions do they have? Really having that deep understanding of the pain points and their interests, so that all that content is really driving home for them and providing that value that Brad mentioned. So, and there's a ton of ways to do that. If you know why they're coming to that site, they might need a job, they might need someone to do a job, they have a problem or question. You need to build that trust also. And I think Jeff mentioned trust, but really showing that trust through leveraging testimonials, case studies, getting videos. I don't know if anybody mentioned video. Huge way to get content across easier for people that don't have that attention span. And then really just connecting, like David said again, with that rational and emotional level in your sales and marketing. So you've got that trust, and now they give them a compelling reason to reach out right now and connect on an emotional level. I'm going to help you. I want to be here for you. I care about you. I'm going to solve your problems. So that's all I can really add to that.
All right, thanks, guys. And before we move on to this question too, I actually want to throw something in. You guys triggered a thought for me. So I just recorded a segment for the Secrets of Staffing Success Insights podcast with Brad and Matt. And one of the things they wanted to talk to me about was, how do salespeople get more sales in a market as it gets tougher to get a job order? And my advice was really that there's 3 sales that you need to make. The first is the sale to get someone's attention. So the tools that Brad's was talking about is, how do I get your attention on social media? How do I get attention with paid advertising? How do I get your attention with SEO? And some of it's about having the right content. Some of it's about having the right message. Some of it's about having the right visuals. And a lot of it's about being at the right place at the right time over and over again, till your audience is where you're putting your message, and you're putting your message where your audience is. The second sale is, why should someone meet with you? So right now, people are busy. I think they've always been busy. But if you read the news, everyone's worried that their job's on the line. If you look at the answers into our question, you guys have lots of job orders and everybody's busy filling them and stressed about getting work done. But the time for an employer to meet with a salesperson or an employed candidate to meet with a recruiter is scarce. So to give someone a reason to meet, if I go back a few years, it was as simple as, well, we have talent to fill your open order needs. I'll meet with you. Now today, and as the market gets tighter, it's going to be more about what problems in my business do I have? And to what Vicki just said, depending on what I do, if I'm in HR, it's a different problem than if I'm a department head or a supervisor or a CEO. What problem are those people dealing with that you as a staffing professional can solve? So you don't talk staffing at first, you talk the client's business problems to get that desire to meet. Then the third sale is, why should I buy from you? And that's where Brad was talking about some of those, and Jeff were talking about some of those trust signals. So does the website have reviews? Does it have awards? Does it have testimonials? Are you pulling things in that make people believe that what comes out of the mouth of your salespeople and recruiters is absolute truth, because what they see on your website and around the internet matches? So, getting people to the site really directly integrates with using all these tools to help sell. All right, let's move on to our second question. So we get them to the website, they're there. How do we get them to take action? All right, Becca, this is your area of expertise. How do we get people, once they hit the site, to do something?
Yeah, great question. I think almost everybody mentioned personas. I was going to start with that as well. It's as important for your website and your website experience to understand who those people are coming to your site, so that you can make sure that you're addressing their pain points, addressing their goals. Why are they coming to your site? Once you know that, you can start to work on some conversion paths. And how are people going to move? How do they land on your site? Are they landing on the services page if they're an employer? If they're landing on that page, do you have a clear CTA at the very top above the fold that will direct them to fill out a job order form or contact your recruiters? Really want to think through that and make it as easy as possible for them to move through the website and eventually download content that's going to address their pain points, address their goals, reach out to you. You want to make sure that you're reducing friction as much as possible and making it as easy as possible for people. Simplify, make sure it's skimmable, and you can really quickly go through and understand what your company can offer them, and really frame it in a way that this is what you can do for them, rather this is just what we do. You can use, as David mentioned, social proof. Make sure that's in your site. Make sure other people have trusted this company to do work for them or to find a job for them. And okay, I can trust them too, because I can see that they've done it for other people. I talked a little bit about reducing friction. Vicki, you've done a ton of research on CRO. There's a lot of barriers that can get people from converting. What have you seen?
So friction is probably my word of 2023. How do we remove friction from working with Haley Marketing Group? How do we help our staffing clients remove friction for their job candidates and for their potential clients? And we talk about that all the time. And your website, it's your front door, right? It's people are going there to check you out, see who you are, what you do, what you're all about. Can you solve my problem? Do I trust you? And then we build websites for our clients. And some of our clients are very determined that the copy that's written is about me, but not from the perspective of the person that's coming there. Really, we often have to talk our clients out of making salesy, company-focused copy and really push them towards, what are you actually providing? What is the value you offer? How do you differentiate? Why would somebody want to work with you? So I think that copy, and Becca talked a little bit about the user design and how we might design the page to get somebody to convert. But I also think copy adds into that. It's got to be skimmable, which Becca mentioned, I think David mentioned as well, but that's the headlines and the subheads and some, call out copy, maybe some imagery, CTAs that are compelling and make you want to actually press a button. Not too many fly-ins. I'm not a big fan of fly-ins. I know they work, so we use them. I would say when we come to the copy side of a website, really having a clear purpose for every single page and understanding the actions that is desired for that page. If there's not a purpose for the page, it doesn't belong on your site. It's just wasting space and it's taking up time from somebody. So every time you look at your structure of your website, you need to know, what is the purpose of this page? what do I want this person or persona to do once they have there? So once you have that, then you can write your calls to action. You can write your copy around it. The other place where I see issues is in the navigation. And I think this was mentioned a little bit before, but sometimes we have clients that want to get clever in their navigation. It really needs to be common navigation. Home needs to be home. My logo needs to link to home. There's, services should be services. Jobs on my website should be right in my main nav. If I'm a job seeker, that's the first button I want to press. And when I come to your website, I'm looking at that hero image. I'm reading that the headline, maybe some subhead right there. I'm not typically scrolling. My eyes going up to your nav. I expect it to be in a certain place, not fancy, not creative, and I expect it to have certain words that compel me to do something. It's really important with CRO. I know we want to be creative. There are other places in your site to be creative. And then I talked before about building trust. I could say this all day. You really have to provide proof. Somebody's coming to your website, they don't know who you are. You want to compel them to trust you, to understand that in the past you've solved similar problems for people that are similar to them. That's the key, right? You might have solved a problem for somebody else, but is it going to work for me? I don't want to waste my time if not. We talked about long forms, not asking for things you don't need. So I have a newsletter sign up that's got some compelling content, like David mentioned, but I want to just get an email address at that point. We can use marketing automation and other tools to get more information later. But if you start to ask me when I'm signing up for a newsletter for my first name, my last name, my company name, my address, my phone number, my whatever, I'm starting to go, yeah, that's too much of an investment and I don't know you well enough yet. You're asking for too much too soon. So timing that information. And then I think you need to think about job seekers. I know people don't love this, but salary is what people need to know. We're not going to apply for a job if I don't know if it's in the salary range I need. States are coming around and making changes to their requirements and laws. So we're seeing more and more salary because we're being forced to. But when people are applying for a job, they want to know that that job's going to pay what they can afford to take. And aesthetics of the site. I'll just leave it at that. If it looks like it was built 10 years ago, they're not trusting you. They're not signing up for anything you have. The CRO is probably not there. Your call to actions probably aren't there. And it may not represent the business that you're currently in. A lot has happened in 10 years. So I'll leave it at that and send it over to Jeff because I could talk all day about this. And I'm sure Jeff wants to get in something here because he's been doing a ton of CRO research. He's been training our staff. So what else did I miss?
I think you hit it. Both of you guys hit it pretty well. I mean, it becomes like the common sense thing. If the site is ugly to look at, I mean, it's going to be like, you're going to be turned off. And I think that, there is a lot of research around that. And I remember, I think this was probably 10 years ago or so. And I was talking to a manager of mine and he was like, if the website is a menu, like you don't want that. Like, don't make your website a menu of the services you provide. Make it a story. Create a hero. The hero is, who you're trying to have them raise their hand and say, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm on the site and that is me. And this is how you help. Oh, that's great. And because you want to elicit a response. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially when you're talking about bringing somebody from, like Facebook or LinkedIn or from an outside, whether you're doing pay-per-click, there's a payoff that website or that landing page has to have. And if you don't have your story straight, Becca talked about personas and that's it, whether it's title-based personas, whether it's pain point-based personas, whether it's vertical-based personas. If you don't have the payoff and you just kind of like reintroduce yourself again, and you're not creating that relevant messaging, it's not going to work. People are done because, it's 3 to 5 seconds. I mean, there's billboard chunks that you have to, have your visitors go through. And I see a lot of websites. I mean, we've done almost 200 website reviews so far. And unfortunately, a lot of them are, rating as like, it's more of a menu. It's more of, it's what is compelling. And, the whole, like, I don't want to get married with my 75 fields I got to fill out. Like, just get enough information to get them into into the funnel, and then give them information, then ask for information. And so I think, from a CRO perspective, you know, a lot of it is you want them to raise their hand and say, yeah, that's me. Like that your messaging makes sense. And then obviously the navigation and, you know, load speed and all that other stuff is super important and almost should be foundational at this point. But it's really that messaging that needs to really hit it and really get somebody excited about working with you. And I haven't seen it much yet. It's getting better. You know, and I think that this is going to be a good year for that because we're going to have to refocus on the sales side of things. So
Yeah,
David, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of sites that look good. But then when you really dig into them, you mentioned those 200 website reviews. I've done a bunch of them myself. And, you know, I'll start with a site and my first reaction is, wow, this site's gorgeous. And then I start really looking at it from a CRO perspective, like, wait, it takes me a lot to figure out what they want me to do. It takes a lot to figure out where to go. As you said, it's too much focus just on the company. And I love the example you gave of telling a story. The analogy that somebody told me, and this is really geeky of me, but I'm going to say it anyway, is, you know, the person you're trying to reach, the employer, the job seeker, that's Luke Skywalker. You're Yoda. Your job is to be their coach, their guide. I told you it was geeky, Vicky. You can laugh all you want, but that's your job. When you're telling the story, you're not the hero. Your client, your candidate is the hero. You're the guide that helps them realize it. And Vicky, when you talked about credibility, one thing that we haven't mentioned so far, and this is controversial in staffing, put your clients' logos on your website. Most staffing companies don't want to do it because they either say their clients won't let them, or they don't want their competitors to see who they're working with. Well, the second answer is kind of silly because your competitors are already calling on your clients. And if the strength of your relationship is that you're the only one who knows that company's name, that's not real good for you. So I don't think that's really the strength of your relationship. I remember we had a client in Silicon Valley in IT staffing, and you got to the logos in his website, and it was a who's who of big tech companies. And I first time we worked with him, I said, "These are your clients?" He said, "Yeah, every one of them." I said, "Wow, did they give you permission to put their logos in your website?" And he's like, "No chance in hell, I didn't ask." But they've been there for 10 years and nobody said take them down. But those are really our clients. I mean, he had Facebook, he had eBay, he had big name companies. But you want to talk about a credibility builder, he supplies contract staff to those organizations. He doesn't have to say much more than these are my clients. And lastly, Rebecca, one quick question before we move on. You used a term that we use all the time. I just want to make sure everybody understands it. I think it's clear, but you talked about having that first call to action being above the fold. What does that mean?
Yes, I didn't really explain what that means. So when you're looking at your website and you land on a new page, it's the part that you can see on your screen without scrolling. So you want to make sure that you have a call to action to get somebody to take action, to go to a form, to submit a job order above that fold, so they don't even have to scroll to get to it. They can just land on that page, hit that button, and it'll take them right where they're looking to go.
Yeah, I think particularly when you look at mobile, almost all your candidates are checking your site out on mobile. That above the fold call to action is they got to get to your jobs. All right, thank you. Let's go to our last question. And our final Q&A is, all right, so we got people there. We've done a lot of things to try to get them to take action. Maybe we got them to be an actual sales lead. We call that an SQL. Maybe it's just an MQL. They're a marketing lead because they downloaded some content or they read a blog post. But how do we then get them to come back? Staffing's not a one-call close. Our relationships with clients and candidates aren't going to be a one-touch relationship. In fact, we know from looking at data that a candidate coming back to your website a second time is twice as likely to apply to a job. So how do we get employers after they've checked out the site to come back? And I know, Jeff, this is your area again. Let's start with you.
Yeah, I think from an, obviously I'm going to advocate for automation. So, because it's such an easy way to help. And I think with sales people, the natural is they want to be on the phone, they want to call, they want to, they want to talk to people. And of course it's harder and harder to get people on the phone. So if somebody is on your site and you know that they're on your site, start, and I just think about conversion funnel. Think about low risk. I know we mentioned it in the last question where it's like, don't have 10 fields, 15 fields to fill out. Start with something that is going to pique their interest. Maybe it's a checklist. Maybe it's a, when I was on the staffing side at Talent Launch, we would offer, just quick hit checklists about how to create a, how to retain more employees and the top ways to retain more employees. Because again, you're creating content about them and what's going to help their business. Start with something low risk, and then get them to download that, and then get them into an automation sequence, which you can ask them about, more about their information, data enrichment, where are they at with their staffing provider, have them come back to the site. And so all you're doing is just, those little quick hit emails that you can put them into a sequence, and then introduce more of the website as you go along, instead of just saying, if you need somebody, call me. If you need somebody, fill out this form, keep filling out this form. And, because again, they don't know who you are. And so I think that, to your point about the one call close, I think you can have a one call close. You may need like a 5-click email, to get them to the one call close, because they want to learn more about that, about your organization and what you can do in staffing, and that you truly are an expert. So I don't know, Brad, you probably know all sorts of hidden tips and tricks on this one. So
well, hopefully I'll try to share some, but Jeff, I like your point of using automation, because the data shows now you've got to have a contact with a prospect 18 to 20 times before they're even going to start to pay attention.
Yeah.
And most salespeople are stopping at two contacts, and then they're done. That's not a good recipe for driving business and driving sales. So I'm going to repeat something I said earlier. I think every single staffing company should be running remarketing or retargeting ads. So when somebody comes to your website, when they engage with your content, you might have spent money getting them there through job advertising. You might have spent money getting them there through PPC. You might have spent effort getting them to your website through creating content or sharing it on social. They're not going to convert that first time, most likely. So what are you doing to stay in front of them? You need to create great content that encourages them to come back, but remarketing ads can be extremely cost effective and begin to follow people around the internet, not in a creepy way, but in a way that keeps your brand top of mind throughout that entire decision-making process, because they're looking at your website, they're looking at other competitor websites, they're hopefully talking to you, talking to some competitors. What are you doing to stand out and stay in front of them consistently and build that name recognition? I think it's one of the most cost-effective, easiest marketing tools, and it should just be, in my eyes, a cost of doing business. Jeff, building on automation and email, it starts by getting people's contact information. So every single person that you're talking to, get their contact information. Put them into that top of your marketing funnel so that you can reach more people. I was just talking to a staffing company earlier this week, a staffing owner, and he was complaining that his sales team spent more time developing lists and figuring out who they were going to call than they did actually calling those people. That's silly.
And outside the CRM.
Yes.
Like a lot of times they're not even using the CRM. I'm like,
right.
Oh, it's all right there.
Yes.
Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Collect that information, get it into your CRM, have a process to use it so that the right activities are happening at the right consistency. Free your sales team up to focus on A and B prospects, and use marketing automation, email, mass contacts to keep those C and D prospects on a campaign and hopefully elevate them to A and Bs. It's refocusing your sales team, and it's using marketing, automation, and technology more effectively to drive people further down that sales funnel. And building on that, when you are collecting information, get your sales team in the habit of connecting with everyone on social, on LinkedIn, on other channels. Share that content consistently so that they continue to see your name over and over and over again. So it builds trust. And when you do make that call and the receptionist says, "Hey, I've got Victoria Kenward on the line here," you're thinking to yourself, how do I know her? I know her for some reason. I'm going to take this call. So it's going to increase your effectiveness. And then provide your salespeople with some process, some integrated sales and marketing process. It could be a mix of digital, it could be a mix of real world. Take all that valuable content that you're providing and use it to drive traffic back to your website. And then, as Becca mentioned earlier, make sure that your call to action is above the fold so that you make it as easy and simple as possible to convert. One of my favorite conversion tools is Simple. And this one I don't think enough staffing companies use, but skill market the heck out of your inventory. I have clients that are sending out top candidate mailings consistently. Each time they do it, they're getting 3, 4, a dozen orders, and maybe not even people that are reaching out to say, hey, yeah, you sent Jeff's resume. I want to hire Jeff. It might be, hey, I'm actually in the market for a CMO. Do you have anybody that falls into that category? So skill market those people. And then another tip that a lot of good salespeople are using effectively and recruiters are using effectively is turn your reference check calls into lead generation calls. So you got to realize that when you're doing reference checks, you're talking to hiring authorities, you're talking to company leaders, you're talking to managers, you might be talking to HR. Gather information on those calls. And you don't want to make a hard sell on that call, but you want to find out what's going on in their business, see if you can add value, collect their information, get them into your funnel, and generate leads long-term. So those are some things I'd look at. I know that websites, user experience, branding, everything else has a big impact on whether these marketing tactics help convert. Becca, I'm going to pass it over to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about branding, brand consistency, user experience, and how important that really is for staffing companies to get people to take action once they're there.
Yeah, definitely. And Brad, you're talking about remarketing and PPC ads. Jeff talks a lot about email and automation. Every time someone comes in contact with one of those PPC ads, one of those remarketing ads, you're seeing your brand. And if your brand isn't consistent, well, they're going to might think it's a different company, or they might not connect the two. So you really want to make sure that you have a really solid strategy across your entire brand. What is the tone and voice you're going for? What is our visual identity, our colors? Even if something is, you'll look at the Haley marketing brand, we use these rounded corners on a lot of our marketing. And it's such a small detail that allows us to create continuity across everything we're doing in marketing. And the more you do that, the more trust. And we talked a lot about building trust, but that continuity in your brand continues to build trust. People are more likely to trust companies that have consistent brand, that have consistent design. And that's across everything you're doing, from your website, all of your digital marketing. It also makes you more memorable. People are more likely to remember you, or they're going to go, oh, hey, I think I've seen that before. And they're more likely to trust you or go with you or reach out. I read a stat the other day that a cohesive brand is likely to increase your revenue, something like 33%.
It's huge.
And yeah, it's a massive number. It kind of surprised me, but it just goes to show how important it is. And people are more likely to buy from brands that they trust and brands that they've seen before.
And you don't want your salespeople going rogue either. I mean, it's no coincidence that if you look at our pictures here, we all have the same background. Now you can have variations a little bit, but to Becca's point, having that consistency drives trust, and it gets people comfortable that you are a cohesive brand. You're working together. You're a company that is going to provide consistency.
And I got to do a shout out. So thank you, Becca, for designing our background. And thank you, Magezi, for setting it up. So when the webinar started, we all had consistent backgrounds, because you do need people thinking about this. Because Brad, you mentioned the rogue, and I started thinking about franchises and the experience we've had of the franchisor has a great brand that they've developed for the company, but franchisees then will do some of their own stuff. And it's really off brand. And it actually damages both the franchisee and the franchisor, because now there's a disconnect, a lack of continuity. And when there's a disconnect between what people see in one place and they see in another place, or between what people see and what they hear people say, that creates distrust. And nobody wants to work with a staffing company they don't trust. So to Becca's point, that continuity is just absolutely critical. I'm kind of shocked that it would be 33% more sales, but I can absolutely see candidates applying being much higher, because they trust you because of the continuity and the right message. All right, guys, we've got about 13 minutes left. I know we've got some questions to get to. So let me share my screen again, and we're going to go do our wrap up, and then we will take the Q&A. All right, so let's wrap this up. Let's see if it's going to share. There we go. All right, so some simple steps, some takeaways for everybody to turn your website into a sales engine. First, think about the who and the why. Do a deep dive on your website visitors. Who are they? Build those personas. Think about all of the different audience that are coming to your website that you really care about and how you'll engage with them. Why are they coming to you. Make a list of the questions. Talk to your salespeople about the questions they're getting on sales calls. Talk to your recruiters about what they're being asked during interviews, because you want to understand the pain points, the interests, the needs of each of the audiences you're trying to engage, and ensure that somewhere on your website, you've got at least a page focused on answering those questions. And Brad will probably yell at me for SEO. And you shouldn't have one page that's trying to do 17 different things, because that won't rank. You really want pages to be focused, because that will help Google understand what it's all about. It improves relevancy. All right, next, create a content and a conversion plan. So what does that mean? Well, first you need a content plan. What topics do we want to write about? What questions do you need to answer with your website? Where do you want to be seen as an authority? Is it just in staffing as a whole? Is there a subset of staffing, maybe for a specific skill discipline or a specific type of problem that you're really good at solving? And then when will you post, and in what format? Will they be blog posts? Will they be videos? Will you do a podcast and put them on your website? We just had this discussion this morning about a client that's got a great podcast. They want the podcast on there, and now we want to add full transcripts along with the podcast. Why? Because all that written content from the transcript is awesome for search engines, because the podcast is all about asking and answering questions. Then have a conversion plan. Becca mentioned it earlier, the conversion path. How's somebody getting to your website? Don't assume they're coming to your homepage. They may start on a job. They may start on a blog post. They may start on your services page. They may start on a location page. And then what are you offering when they get to those pages? What are all the calls to action? Go brainstorm those hooks and figure out where you can put them on your website. Then go back a level and say, okay, we've got these hooks. How do we get them there? What's our digital marketing strategy to bring people to the website? How are we integrating marketing with what our salespeople and recruiters are doing to bring people to the website? I think it may have been Brad or Jeff who mentioned earlier, are we using tools like NetSocial that automate getting all of the salespeople and all of the recruiters to automatically share our company content on social media channels to reach their audiences, the people they're connected to? How will people get to the offers? Have you thought about that user experience and the user interface where I land on page number 1, but then how do I get to page number 2 where the offer is? And how do I get to page number 3? And one of the big things that Becca pushed us to do on our own site is when somebody fills out a form, there's a thank you page that appears. That thank you page can actually be one of your best sales pages and shouldn't be overlooked as just someone will get back to you soon. No, use it as a way to sell subsequent offers or gather more information from the person who's visiting. You already got them to fill out the first page. Maybe you got their email address. Now I can learn more. Your brain, your ears, your eyes, and your mouth, they're your best conversion tools. Look, listen, see, interpret, and understand how you can add value for the people coming to your website. And then create a traffic generation plan. Where are you going to reach people? How are you going to get their attention? How are you going to get them to come to your website? Why are you going to give them a reason to meet? And ultimately, it's, sorry about the flow there, persistence wins when it comes to CRO. Stay top of mind through, Brad talked about it, retargeting ads, through automation, through email marketing, through salespeople making calls, recruiters making calls. Build relationships. This is about a combination of warmth and competence, showing people that you're good at what you do, competence, and showing people that you're very trustworthy, that you're honest, you're caring. That's the warmth. People want to do business with organizations that demonstrate that combination of warmth and competence. And then repeat your calls to action. Showing somebody something once does not get them to take action. There's something that we talk about in our leadership team all the time. If we want people on our own team to see something we're doing, we have to talk about it at least 7 times. In the advertising agency world, they talk about making sure somebody sees your offer 21 times. So how are you going to have that repetition in your calls to action to re-engage with people, bring them back? Because ultimately that's what's going to, as the picture shows there, get you inside their brain so that they want to work with you. All right, before we get to Q&A, I promised you, because we're running up at the end of the hour, I promised you to repeat the offer that we made in the email. So if you got the email, you already got this today. If you didn't, and you want us to look at your website from a CRO perspective, we have a 30-point checklist we go through to look at CRO. So you can go to haleymarketing.com/website review give us your contact information and our team will do that 30-point review on your site. All right, so let's move over to questions. We've had one in the question box so far. Somebody wants to see an example of this, and I'll bring that up in a moment. We've also have a couple of other questions that I'll be happy to share. So, Brett, I'm going to ask this one to you first, because I think you do more. Whenever somebody on our team asks a question, you jump in analytics to answer it. So how do you know if your website is performing well?
I think you kind of answered that, David, with the question. You look at analytics. So I'll go to Google Analytics to see what the actual data says instead of just trying to rely on gut. So I can usually go to a website and get a good feel for whether or not it's going to convert and what the analytics look like. But if you go and look at metrics like time on site, you look at things like your bounce rate. So how many people land on your site and then leave without going to another page. If you look at the top exit pages on your website, and you can identify all of those areas where you have leaks in the funnel where people are escaping. Or you can look at form fills. You can look at total inbound leads generated to the website. And you can, on your forms, look at ratio of visits to completed form fills. That'll give you a really good indicator for whether your website is performing well or not. So those are some things that I really look at. In fact, I just did an analysis this morning of one of our ongoing SEO clients. And one of the things that we focused on for them is looking at content on their site that's getting a lot of traffic, but isn't converting. So we would go back to that content that got a high volume of visitors. We might go back and tweak subheadings. We're putting inline CTAs, inline calls to action right within the content of that blog post. We're making sure that that blog post has a strong call to action multiple times throughout that content and on that page. And by doing that, we improved their search engine optimization. So traffic from search engines was actually up like 38% or something like that. But more importantly, time on site, our time on that page almost doubled. And then the conversion rate doubled. So people were going on to other pages. So even just identifying top performing pages in terms of traffic on your site and going back to that individually to see what you can do to convert more of that traffic can have a big impact on gross margin.
Thanks, Charlie. One other question just came in that's sort of in the same category, so I'll ask it. What's a good bounce rate for the staffing industry?
Well, you mentioned earlier, average is around 60. I've seen as high as 70%. If you can get below 50, that's going to be great. The challenge with staffing websites, though, is you're getting a ton of traffic from candidates that are looking at specific jobs. You might be doing specific job advertising. It might be driving traffic back to an individual position. So one thing that you really need to do is take a look at that user experience, especially from the candidate standpoint, and look at what you can do to maybe serve up related jobs, make things more interesting, create better job descriptions. And I think a lot of that can help. I would also look at analytics and look at your top exit pages and your highest bounce rate pages. You're going to find a lot of information there that you can use to improve your site. And then if you do all that and you still have a high bounce rate, maybe you're just getting the wrong traffic. So you need to evaluate that too.
Awesome.
I would also at that point, and then you should be talking to your clients. Why did they choose you? What problems are you solving for them? How are you differentiating for them? And then you can create personas based on your best performing clients, and then look at your content on your website and make sure that's how you're presenting yourself, because you're already doing it.
Love that.
All right. Another question is, somebody said, I don't think we're getting a lot of leads from our website. So how do I identify where the issue is? Anyone want to take that?
I can tackle that. And again, and anybody feel free to jump in. But when I look at it, I look at things in terms of a funnel. And I think Jeff mentioned it earlier. So we get people into the top of that funnel. Those are information gatherers. Those are people that are just looking for potential information. We want to look at what we can do to drive them further down the funnel. So whenever I see a website that's not driving leads, I number one, look at total traffic. Are we getting enough people into the top of that funnel? If we're not, let's create more content. And to Vicky's point, let's create better content that's more aligned with what our audience wants. Now, let's say we do have good top level traffic numbers. Then I'm going to look at engagement. So some of those things that I just mentioned, like time on site, bounce rate, pages that they're exiting on. I'm going to look at that and evaluate that and try to tighten that up. If people leave immediately, I'm most likely probably getting the wrong people or wrong audience. Maybe I'm posting the wrong content or posting in the wrong places. And then if time on site, if engagement is good, if bounce rate, if exit rates aren't an issue, then I'm looking at that second to last step in that funnel. I'm looking at my landing pages to make sure that they can convert. And we have that call to action above the fold, like Becca mentioned. I'm testing different messages and calls to actions. I'm reviewing conversion rates on forms, and then I'm testing. So make a single change, look at the data after a few days, and if it improved, great. If it didn't, make something else.
Awesome.
But
Thank you. Go ahead.
Right. One change at a time, because if you start to change too many things, you're not going to know what worked and what didn't work. So it's a test and try and adapt.
Yeah. And this is going to be a blatant plug, but talk to Haley Marketing Group, talk to one of us, because we probably have the answer already because we ran into it.
Awesome. Jeff, I want to ask a question that came in sort of up your alley. So we hear a lot about automation, and almost everything in automation has been about recruiting and improving the candidate experience. How are people starting to use automation to sell?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember doing I think it was Colorado Staffing Association talking about sales automation, and I made a stat, and I think I just made it up, but like 95% of automation has been focused on recruitment. And there's just nothing on sales, which I'm like, B2B is my thing. I like it. And I think I mentioned it earlier in kind of the phases, but I think from a sales automation standpoint, look at your automation platform as another salesperson. And so like the ability to expand and the ability to, using it in the welcome series. So look at your whole sales funnel. Like what I always tell people is take a look at your process, take a look at your sales process. If you need to get new leads, you want to warm them up, they're cold leads, put automation there. If you are having trouble following up with leads, prospects that are already in your database, add automation there to basically nurture them, keep them engaged, stay top of mind with them. And then if they are looking to close and give you an order or, sign an agreement, use automation to, send them proof of why it makes sense to work with you. And I think that, those are the first thing. The one that I know is a winner, is an absolute winner. And I've tried it with clients, is right now an inactive client check-in. I would do that. If you have an automation platform, I would talk to and create a list, a status, whatever, of clients that you haven't had a placement with for about a year, maybe 2 years, something like that. And I would create an automation that's a series of a couple emails, basically a knock on their door asking for their feedback on what they're seeing. Not that you want an order, but what are they seeing and would love to get their insights. That has proven, I've seen 50, 60% open rates. I've seen about 10 to 15% meeting rates where they're going to have a coffee meeting or something else. That is a winner that I advocate every time I talk to somebody about sales automation.
And somebody asked the question, what's a good conversion rate on a B2B staffing client-focused offer? And I would say in that 10 to 15% rate is a fantastic response rate. Usually you're looking at conversion rates on forms 2 to 4%.
2, yeah. About 2. That's about it.
All right, guys, we are at 3:00. We did have a really good question that came in. Can I see an example of a website that's good at CRO? I'll stay after and bring up one that I like. But since we're at the end, I just want to wrap up, say thank you to everybody for joining us for this webinar. I hope you enjoyed our kind of new modified format, a mix of PowerPoint and us chatting. I also hope you're going to join us in a few weeks. We talked a little bit about SEO today, and we're going to do a deep dive in February on how to do SEO in the staffing industry specifically. And is your staffing firm's SEO invincible or are you invisible? So join us on Thursday, February the 16th. Celebrate your post-Valentine's Day with us, and we'll show you lots on staffing industry SEO. All right, guys. So the question came in during the webinar about seeing an example of a site that's good at CRO. And that's like picking your favorite child. And that's not an easy thing to do. So I was looking around while we were talking earlier, one that I like, and I'll share one, but if any of you guys have ones you want to share, again, for everybody who wants to stand and listen, we'll walk through a site and some things I liked about it. So I'm going to stop sharing and switch for a second. Get out of PowerPoint, get my browser up. And then we'll go back in.
So who's your favorite child, David? So you kind of avoided that. And
I did. Some keen observers may have noticed the similarity of last names of one of our presenters today, who will swear she is my favorite. All right.
I know
that
I'm the
being-
favorite.
Share again. Okay, so this is a company. Megaforce. So I like this one when I was looking at it for a few different reasons. Now, we talked about using a lot of different things, offer above the fold. So we've got the traditional find work, find people. But then right below that, still above the fold, is a search bar. So very much like you'd get on an Indeed or any job site. If I'm a candidate, I know how to use this right away. We've got an arrow directing your eye right to it. We also don't feel like have a fly-in that comes in. Now, personally, I would probably have delayed this a little bit more, rather have it come in when you're further down the page. But we've got another call to action. And Vicki talked about this earlier. She said she hates how these get overdone on websites, but we have seen that a fly-in at the right time for one of our clients, we measured the change in applications, applies went up 71%.
Hard to argue with that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to argue with that. And it's a matter of, again, if you delay it or make it so when you scroll a little bit, you can, so it doesn't overlay other things. I would have done this one slightly differently, but I'm not going to complain too much. Another thing I really like about this, Becca talked about it earlier, navigation. It's not just the typical staffing navigation. It's really clear. Apply now, find a job, request talent. Here's our locations, because those are the most common things Megaforce's website visitors want to do. Now they have other navigation. They have all the traditional stuff that's below a hamburger menu, but even when I bring up their menu, it repeats those main calls to action. So we're driving people visually to the calls to action. We're limiting choice to get people to what we want them to do. I like that a lot. We're using color effectively from the bright red of their logo, then contrasting that with the light grays. The contrast draws your eye, then bringing it back to full color people right away now, featuring jobs. This is what these are jobs that you can go right to and look at, ones that they want to get candidates to. And as you scroll down the page and each section comes in, there's a primary and a secondary call to action for each section. Talked about calls to action that require emotional commitment. So requesting talent, maybe that's emotional commitment. I'm not ready to hire someone yet. Okay, but I want to know why I should choose Megaforce. So I want a little more proof before I contact you. I've got this primary and secondary. Now they would love to have the request talent, but I'm giving people visiting the site 2 ways to engage at a deeper level. We talk about what we do, very simple, light industrial and administrative staffing. We see organizations that they're affiliated with. I would love to see some client logos on this. That's one thing they don't have, but I do like that they have organizations they're affiliated with. This just the message here, that warmth and caring. We're not just providing staffing service. These aren't just testimonials. Our force is impacting lives. Here are our stories. Just the way they talk about testimonials. I really like that. And then their own blog. Okay, they've got blog posts. You can read blog posts and you can go view all of them. And then down in their footer, they've repeated calls to action. So wherever I'm on the site, the navigation at the top is sticky. You may have noticed that it stays there. I've got calls to action throughout the site. So a lot of really good things that I liked in this site. Now, I'm sure anybody looking at this could probably listen to what we talked about today and say, but they didn't do A or they didn't do B. There's always room for improvement. We did a CRO review of our own website. We found tons of things to improve, and we're in the business. If we built a website and we launched it last week, there'll still be ways to improve CRO. And that's one of the reasons a website should be something that you're constantly evaluating, maybe every 60 days, 90 days, no more than 100. You're going back and looking at it and saying, is this doing all for us that it can? What Brad mentioned, we're looking at the analytics, we're looking at performance, and we're looking to make improvements. So I hope you like this quick demo of one of the sites I like. Guys, anything else you'd highlight on this site?
Did you talk about that nav? Because I think the nav is really great on this site because it's those things that you might want to do, and then everything else is hidden behind a hamburger menu. It's still accessible and easy to get to, but apply, find a job, get talent. And where are you located?
Yeah, which are the most common functions for a job seeker or an employer. So you get people to what they want without adding extra overhead. Also, even the labels. It's just crystal clear what you're asking people to do or to allowing people to do.
One thing I like, David, is not only at the top of the fold do you have the right call to action, but as you scroll, almost every scroll has a CTA or an opportunity to convert. You don't have to go either all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom. It's integrated throughout.
Absolutely. All right, good. I think there's some other questions that come in, guys, but it's 10 after 3. We're going to wrap it up here. We'll take a look at these questions. If there's anything we can answer. There was one last, somebody said, I'm new in marketing in the staffing industry. Where can I get help? Go to haleymarketing.com, go to resources, take a look at our ebooks, take a look at our blog posts, take a look at our podcasts, go to lunchwithhaley.com. We've got 13, maybe 14 years now of recorded webinars that you can go listen to on demand to learn about just about any topic in marketing in the staffing industry. And we've addressed it through different markets. If you go way back in time and you look at what we did in 2009 and 2010, we were teaching people how to get out of the Great Recession. Through the mid-teens, we were teaching people how to recruit. COVID, we had different types of webinars. So there's phenomenal content to help you. I would probably start with our marketing best practices guide, our how to market a staffing company, our smart marketing checklist, our smart recruiting checklist, and our smart automation checklist. All right, guys, I think that's got to be it for today. Thank you all very much, both to our panelists for participating and to our audience for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next month for our SEO Lunch with Haley. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.